So Stephanie, my wife, and I started Voices.com about 10 years ago. And my background is actually in audio engineering. I was, worked on the other side of the glass, if you will. And it began after I graduated from school and opened up a small recording studio in our hometown, London, Ontario. The other London, the small London, which is about near Toronto in Canada. So if you need to recognize the accent, you'll know it's a Canadian accent. Opened up the studio, got my name in the local newspaper on my birthday of all days. This is where the story gets interesting. You see, Stephanie, who's now my wife, at the time she was a classically trained singer. She'd sing at weddings and funerals and special events, and Stephanie and I just hit it off. And Stephanie being the talent, myself as the engineer. And because of that same newspaper article, there were other small businesses in the city that wanted a voice, a female voice, in fact. And I, being kind of a nerd, I knew only one girl in the city, and that was Stephanie. So I said, do you think you can come down back to the studio, read this page of copy, and we would split the money? In effect, we'd be in business together. And so we did that for local commercials and film systems, and put up arguably the worst website possible. We literally went to the local library because we realized, hey, there's a bit of a market here. We kind of fell into that. And took we took a web design for dummies from the local library, taught ourselves how to build a website, and before you know it, there were freelance voice talent from New York and LA and Quebec who spoke en français and asked, can I be on your website? And we of course said yes. And because once there was a few dozen talent at the very beginning, there was also corporate clients that would say, how do I get a hold of this talent or that talent? And that was really the genesis. There was admittedly no kind of grand vision other than the pursuit of one idea and sticking with it for long enough. So that's how it all began.
Thank you. And for the people who don't know here, who don't know what Voices.com is, can you just explain how it works in terms of, is it a subscription site? How does it work with the hirers and the buyers and the escrow service you run and that kind of thing?
Yep. So Voices is an online marketplace. We're all familiar with, there's lots of marketplaces out there nowadays for everything from freelancers to, Uber and Airbnb arguably being marketplaces. And really the essence of a marketplace is to connect the buyer and the seller. And in this situation, the seller would be the freelance voice actor, and the buyer could be probably those people that you work with all the time, ad agencies, creative producers, in corporate marketing departments, game developers, and so forth. And so our role is merely to connect. That's always been the idea. And so on the talent side, it's what's called a freemium model. And so that means that a talent can absolutely go on and sign up for a free account and create a profile. You are really in what I would consider a wait-and-see mode, where you're waiting for that client to find you through the search engine or through social media and visit your profile that way. However, if you choose, you can certainly upgrade to a premium subscription. And the difference now, you can proactively go after those job opportunities. And at this point, Voices.com receives about 5,000 job opportunities every month. So somewhere in the neighborhood of kind of 200 to 300 every day for, the list of the type of work that gets done. It is an auditioning process, and one of the key trends, I think a catalyst for why the business has taken off in recent years, if I may, is really because of this phenomenon of home recording studios and this need to get this type of work done so quickly. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we've really enjoyed working with Baby for the Brain is the gap that we see that the talent really need to hone up is on not only just having the God-given gifts of a great voice, the business skills and the technical skills, and you really need that as a triple threat. You asked about the escrow service as well too, and so early on we realized that in order to facilitate these transactions, it was one thing just to kind of make the match between a client and a talent. But then once a talent got hired, then the question is, well, what do I do next? And so as part of that bidding process, the talent would, part of their audition, you would enter, upload your sample recording of your voice, but you'd also quote on the project. So whatever you put in, it's in US dollars, so let's say it's $500, we add on a transaction fee. So it's we call it, and the ad agencies think of it this way, is like cost, which is the cost of the talent, plus and the plus is the transaction fee that Voices.com generates revenue from. So that's a 20% transaction fee. So the client would actually see $600. The talent always gets paid exactly what they want to get paid, and that's why that quoting process is so important. And then the files are delivered through the platform as well too. So that's kind of Voices.com in a nutshell, and the different ways that it works.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to ask the easy questions first.
Go for it.
All right, I've got some hard ones lined up, but I'm going to ask the easy questions first. And mainly this is again for people who don't really know the industry with the pay-to-play sites. Voices.com is basically there alongside, whether you want to admit it or not, Voice123, Bodalgo, and all the other sites that exist like that. So, how many voices, premium voices that you're talking about, do you have across the world, and how many do you have in the UK?
So, and I think that's a really important distinction of the premium subscribers, because those are the people who are proactively auditioning for the jobs on a day-to-day basis. At present, there's somewhere around 7,000 talent premium subscribers globally. Approximately 15 to 20% of the talent, so call it somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 to 1,000, would be actually in the UK. And you may not recognize this, but a lot of North American brands actually really resonate with, you know, what would be a gross stereotype is like a British accent, and I know of course there's all kinds of local regionalisms within that, but it's perceived as being luxurious and very aspirational, and so brands that are trying to capture that essence certainly resonate with talent that are, you know, to them overseas. So hopefully that answers the question, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000.
Yeah, good, thank you. And crucially, how many hirers do you have globally? So what's the ratio between the amount of people going for jobs and the amount of jobs coming on?
Yeah. And that's, I think, the you know, arguably the most important part, that, you know, we have 100 full-time staff at Voices.com in sales and marketing and customer service. Almost the entire team is on the client side. We recognize, and this is a bit of the secret sauce here, but we recognize as long as we bring those clients posting jobs, that talent will have an opportunity, right? Talent will have an opportunity to land a gig and in turn win a client. And so the client base at present is 250,000 clients from all around the world. And they each have an account manager. The account manager develops and builds relationships over the course of the year. And again, they, in fact, the team's even organized in geographic territory. So we're almost a 24/7 type of operation, all from our home base in London.
Okay. So when we were chatting earlier on, you mentioned the 15,000 hirers. Is that active hirers compared to 250,000 who have ever done it?
Right. So the 15,000 are actually in the UK, and that's, you know, actually for us one of the fastest growing markets, because we've been, you know, growing slowly but surely in North America, in the US and Canada, for call it the last 10 years. But you know, we view, you know, Europe and the UK as relatively untapped, so it's the fastest growing for us right now.
Okay, page 2. The hard stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. Let's just be honest about this. Most of us, at least most of the pros here, saw the webinar that you did with Graham Spicer on Edge, and I think we've all got some. I mean, you know, great for the brain here. I'm representing the voice artists, and I think that we have some questions that need serious answers about Voices.com, because I think it's fair to say that the current perception in the UK of Voices.com is bad. I think that's a realistic view of Voices.com, presumably why you're here. So, going back to this idea, well, the first question I just want to ask was just to clear something up. Is it a one-tier premium model that you have, in that you pay your premium service and you get access to all of the jobs, or can you then pay like an extra amount and then you get access to more jobs? How does that work?
It is a one-tier. The difference, the only difference is on the search results. It's not access to the jobs, it's not access, so there's a premium monthly subscription, there's a premium annual subscription, and then there's what we call the platinum subscription. And the only difference between any of those is the search engines. Most of the activity happens around the job postings. Job posting goes up, We actually review it. We run filters to make sure that it's legitimate, it's a verified client, that there's our brand, if you look. But the vast majority of the work is going out through the job posting. It's the search where we needed to order it somehow. It couldn't just be, we felt it just couldn't be random. So in that sense, it is platinum at the top of the search results, and then premium annual, and then premium light. But in terms of the auditioning, it's always, everybody gets all the jobs at the exact same time. There's no priority treatment or early warning system or anything like that. In fact, the platinum talent asked for those kind of things. And we've continued to resist that because we are trying to level the playing field as much as possible. There's talent on the site who make literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And to do something like that just means that the next aspiring talent who might have not yet landed their first dozen clients, or let alone even their first one, we just feel like it would be entirely slanting it into one side. And if we really want to create a home for as many talent as possible globally, it's difficult, but we're trying to kind of equal the playing field as much as possible.
Okay, so just to be clear then, there's just one membership fee and you get access to all of the jobs on VDC. Okay, fine. All right, so you mentioned the 20% escrow fee. Most of the players here know that used to be 10%. And if I am a hirer, let's say I am Ford Motors down the road in Dagenham, okay, let's make it local, and I have a budget, let's say that's £1,000, I'm not going to create that budget and then add on 20%. I have that budget already. So when it comes to the voices, what you're basically saying is, here's the voice fee of £500, and we're going to add on the 20%. But that's not actually the reality, is it? The reality is you're taking a cut off the budget, which is a 20% fee. So on the basis that escrow, on average in the world, is between 2.5% and 5%, how do you justify going from 10%, which is higher than normal anyway, to 20%, which is doing nothing other than reducing the fees that the voice artists are getting?
I think it's a completely valid question. We've always viewed it as a talent always gets paid exactly what they quote. So I mean, we can go back and forth. I think there's.
What do you mean by the quote?
So the quote, what we mean by that is the job will go up on voices.com. The client will list a budget range, and so they'll say between 500 and 750. There's always ranges. And so it's really the talent's opportunity to do three things: to record an amazing audition, provide let's call it a cover letter or a brief proposal of why they're the best one for the job, and then to submit a competitive quote. And that really, we found that to put that into the control of the talent, it maintains this idea that we're not controlling pricing, which I think is a key tenet of any marketplace. And certainly, when we first launched the platform, talent, truthfully, were getting ripped off. They would send files halfway around the world, and they wouldn't know.
Pipe down.
And they wouldn't know if they were going to get paid or not. So that was, I think that was a phenomenon that we knew that we were being held responsible for something, basically the payment, that we wanted to ensure happened as cleanly, as efficiently as possible. You're right, it did start at 10%. We looked at the market everywhere from Upwork, which is another freelancer website, Apple, sites like Airbnb or even Uber, and that seems reasonable in terms of what the market would be, acceptable. So these aren't arbitrary decisions. In fact, the fact and notion that the client was, we didn't, basically the client, the biggest fear was the clients who were posting the job that really keep the talent happy. If they left, then we would have gotten it wrong. The fact that there's more clients now continuing to post more jobs, and even at a higher rate, I think says that, as best as possible, that it was reasonable in terms of what the client was looking for.
Okay, so I understand your perspective, but this also is in combination with the subscription. Okay, so, and this is the big thing about Voices.com, is that you're accused of in this case, double dipping, in that you make people pay for a subscription.
Triple.
Well, I'm getting to that, hang on. So you're making people pay for the subscription, and then you're taking 20% of the fee, so that's 2 dips, and I'll come on to the managed service a little bit later on with the 3 dips. Apple's model is not comparable because you have one piece of development that then gets sold all the way around the world, could be 50 times, it could be 300,000 times, and so the maths kind of equate that way. This is a one-on-one service, business to business or customer to business. So I think I'm not wrong in saying, by representing the voice artists, that actually this is just seen as profiteering. And so I think personally, this is why Voices.com has a bad reputation. And what I'd really hoped that you'd come to say was actually, do you know what, actually we got that a bit wrong, and that we hadn't, that maybe 10% was acceptable. So I'd like to give you another opportunity to justify the 20%, because I don't buy it, and I don't think these people do. So what do you think?
Sure. I'm not going to say we got everything right. That's for sure. Anyone who's run and started their own business knows that it's failure after failure. I don't have a background in business. These aren't excuses. These are just the lay of the land. Stephanie and I are learning things as we go. We certainly try to surround ourselves with great advisors and a network of people to try to understand, which is again why we're here, to get the feedback, right? And I think what there's an idea, and I certainly have this, when you use them, because it's on the internet, the perception is that it's free, right? Oh, well, I should just be able to go to Google or pull up any website, and it just kind of works for me. But the reason that the talent find value, the talent who choose to subscribe, is because every year we're spending between $3 to $5 million on advertising and marketing to bring those jobs in. And so the company is set up that way to recognize that in order for a two-sided marketplace to work, you need to have an equal balance as much as possible, and we'll change fees and streamline things as we need to. And I'm not just trying to give you corporate jargon or anything along those lines. I think hopefully people will recognize that we're pretty down to earth people. We know we don't get everything right the first time, and when you try a lot of stuff, life is about meandering and plotting a path, and I think we're, determined to lead the industry in the future, and doing our best as we go.
Okay, so sticking with that, if what you're basically saying is that the costs for doing what you're doing, and everyone understands that you need to get jobs in, that's the right thing to do for your business. If the costs are that much, why don't you just put it into the subscription fee and not take away from the voice artist's actual fees? Yeah, I mean, if you're, what is it, $39 a month, something like that? So why not make it $49 a month, have a slightly higher fee, and then just go down to a normal escrow fee? Because, well, I mean, I can't reiterate the point enough. You're not going to get support from the UK market by keeping an escrow fee like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we've explored a whole variety of options. I mean, I'll go way out there, which is no subscription fee and a 25% transaction fee. Or, as you're proposing, higher subscription fees with no transactions, right? And so right now, we're kind of doing both. And so there's lots of ideas that we've considered, namely the no subscription fee. However, in order that's a big shift for us to kind of get our heads around. And just like there's platinum talent now who people are saying, well, look, then I'll advertise. How can I get better visibility on the marketplace? We just feel like it would be a slippery slope. We just kind of be back at square one. So the way we think about kind of pricing models is almost an extreme basis, right? If it's either no subscription fee or no transaction fee or somewhere in the middle. And so right now we've landed somewhere in the middle.
Okay, questions are going to come at the end, if that's okay. Hold that thought. So, on that particular note then, so I think what we want as voice artists is honesty and transparency. Am I right? That's what we think is the problem with voices.com, is that right?
Yes.
Right, so you're getting direct feedback from everybody. Okay, we'll come back to you in a second, Clayton. So by taking a commission, in the way that you do, you realise you're kind of legally acting as an agency, and so your model is different. I'm not going to dwell on that because it's just a statement, but we'll come back to something else. I want to touch on self-service versus managed service. Could you just explain to everyone what the difference is and how that works?
Yeah. So self-service, so self-service is a client can go onto the website, post a job. Our software, what we call Voice Match, basically takes the inputs of the client, the language, the gender, the age range, the role. So father, mother, guy next door, superhero, villain, the style, funny, sarcastic, right? Takes all of those criteria up, matches that up with the most qualified talent and invites them. Because if there's a mismatch on language or accent, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's not helping anybody. So we match that and invite the talent up to respond. And that, including the auditioning and the quote and the payment, is all completely self-service. We don't, touch or, aside from the reviewing of the job posting initially, once it's approved, it all happens on its own. What we've, and I mean, there's probably been 200 to 250,000 transactions that have been like that. Like, it's a tremendous volume. Interestingly, a number of years ago, we actually got an email to both from, I would say, Fortune 500 companies that oddly went to a spam email inbox, and we were looking for somebody had asked for some help, and they said, oh, it might have gone to your spam box. We're digging through this thing. We found these two emails from these corporate clients that more or less said the same thing. We found somebody on your site, you'd like to hire them. However, due to our procurement process, we need to get you on our vendors list. And if anyone's worked in kind of big corporations, you know that there's a whole, you gotta get on a vendors list, you gotta approve it. It was their terms of service and legals that needed to be agreed upon. And then when it came time to the payment, we're in this automated self-service pay by credit card world, and then you go, no. Here's how we need to make it work. We're going to send you the purchase order. We want you guys to be responsible for the project because we're going to send you the purchase order. And then when it comes time to payment, we're actually going to wire you the payment, 30, 60, 90 days later. And so this, we realized, okay, this, rather than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, the big corporate client who doesn't have a user that can just swipe a credit card to the website, let's take on that project. See if we can service that client. And the notion was not these 30, 60-second spots. I'm talking 10 hours of audio recording in 10 different languages. Lots of moving parts there, right? And so that went from one person on our team to an entire group of account managers who are organized in territories all around the world. And predominantly, they're working with, a division of one of the big 4 ad agencies or a Fortune 500 company. And so, that was certainly not in the initial game plan, but where I think we've made improvements recently is to give the client the ability to choose which quote-unquote level of service that they want. When they go to post a job, they can choose self-service or they can choose full service. And the full service ones are the, as you refer to it, the managed services. We think of that as full service because it's just a little bit more accessible.
Okay, so just to condense that into one sentence, self-service is basically where they go and cast themselves, and managed full service, or whatever you term it, full service is where you do it for them.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so just so that everybody understands that. So, going back to the idea that as voice artists, what we want is transparency, why do Voices.com still refuse to disclose the percentage of the fee of managed service compared to the voice fee?
So I think it's actually quoted and priced out in the exact same way, which is the client will come to us with a project. They will post it, right, or we'll post it in their account so that they can see all the prices from the talent and understand what's going on. And it is again a cost of the talent plus, in this case, not an escrow fee. Instead, and it's not. Again, I would view that as not a triple, but it's a different level of service. You're either doing it self-service and it's 20%, or you're doing it through this full service and it's higher than that. It's roughly between 40 and 50%. And that can be disagreeable. That can be disagreeable, and the clients see that on their invoice. So I understand. No.
The clients may see it on their invoice, but the voices do not. Most voices who get offered a managed service job are asked to quote. They will quote. They may not know enough about the industry to know what they should be quoting for, and you do not educate them. What you do is you know what the client should be paying, you take that money and you allow the voice to undercharge, and you do not educate them as to what they should have charged.
Okay, so just for the people who are watching this on the recording, what Louisa just said was that the companies see what the percentage is, but the voices don't, and therefore we're not educated as voices to see how to actually charge for it. Yeah, so if you could answer that.
Yeah, number one FAQ on the website, and it's actually the most, aside from the homepage and login page, the next most visited page on the site is the rate sheet. Because there's just so many questions around that.
Well, that's what we take agents for.
Sure. So where we came up with the rate sheet was actually polling all of the talent to understand what do you charge for X, Y, and Z. And so the clients see the rate sheet. It's literally linked in the footer. The talent, was provided that same information. And the rate sheet was always meant to be as a communication tool. It's not a rate standard. It's a communication tool. And so, that's as best as we can do to provide something tangible that is accessible to everyone in terms of the education piece. The other, I think, relevant piece of information on this topic is this notion that, okay, well, let's say the client's budget is between $500 and $750. Well, it's always going to go to the lowest quote-unquote bidder, right?
Why?
Okay, hang on.
Right. And why would people think that? Because it's actually just not true. We have, again, the data to look into this because I was personally really curious. And it's actually, again, another one of these Goldilocks effects where, to me, somewhat surprisingly, it's almost dead on. The winning talent is almost dead on in between that range. Because just think about this logically. If it's too much, if it's over the range, then the client goes, well, there's an amazing group of talent who've all auditioned. And so somebody might be marginally less, right? They're within the range. If you come under, now the question marks go up in the client's mind as, whoa, hold on a second. I know I need to pay for quality. There's something else going on here. Or maybe there's maybe the talent doesn't have quite the experience. And so that I just wanted to share that there's this, we talked about kind of the sweet spots in terms of quoting. It really is in the middle of the range. And so, take that for what you will. We've certainly looked at the data and that's what it supports.
Okay. The only problem with that argument, true though it may be, and I mean I am a casting director, I understand how long it takes to cast and the process involved and the employee hours and all that kind of stuff. The issue, as far as I can see it, is you have a £1,000 job and that might be on voices.com and it also might be on Voice123 and it also might be on Vidalgo. The problem is on voices.com you get £200 for the job, whereas you get $600-700 on Voice123 or Vidalgo. And this comes back to the same issue of lack of transparency, is that you're not telling the voices what the reality of the situation is. You know, if you have a managed service, you have to expect to charge for that. Understandable, but you're not telling people what that charge is and therefore what the actual rates overall are. Because the reality of it is, if Ford at Dagenham Motors, they've got a budget of 1,000, they don't say, I've got a budget of 1,000, therefore I'm going to put on 20% for my escrow fee that Voices.com will charge me, and I'm also going to put on my 50% for the managed service, and therefore all of a sudden I've got a new magic budget. Was it the Tories' magic money tree? Where all of a sudden it's now worth £1,700 or whatever the maths is. Actually, the person that loses out is the voice. So I just want to give you the opportunity again to justify what we're talking about, which is the triple dipping issue, which is that they pay the subscription fee, and then there's the managed service, and then there's the escrow fee, and it's the voice artist that loses out in the end. So if you can try and answer that definedly or definitely, I'd appreciate it.
I feel like anything I say is going to be not acceptable. Not acceptable. So, I mean, I'm coming here to try to answer questions. You know, no one's ever going to like the answer on this. Talent can choose whether they use Voices.com or not. And I would encourage you to build your own website and market yourself, and go get an and get it. Absolutely, and that's what we did as well too. So I would encourage you to take up the charge and build the next best site, because I'm not expecting any mini violins here. It's tremendously difficult. It's tremendously difficult.
So you're saying like it or lump it, really?
That's not the argument.
Should we do questions at the end? Because I've got quite a list. We are.
No, well, I know you should. I think you should show the list. I'm merely saying that we're not going to get it right. Nobody would get it right.
You said to Graham you'd be more transparent and you'd side with the voiceover artist in your interview with Graham, and clearly you haven't learned anything.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
I heard the interview with Graham. It was you said you'd help us out.
Yeah, and the best way that we felt that we've been able to help talent is to provide them an option of being on the platform. And I'm sorry that
the escrow fee to 20%.
Okay, I think I should just say here that this interview is not intended to be a witch hunt. Okay, well, it's not intended to be a witch hunt. So if you're, we're trying to give you a platform to give you realistic feedback of what the UK voices think. Okay, so let's reset. Okay, and let's try and just go through the rest of the questions, because they are relevant questions and it is your business model. And I think it's a fair thing to ask the voices. There is this idea that, well, it's a rumour that Voices.com is manipulating the casting process to drive membership sales targets. Is there any truth to that?
There's just no truth to that. There's just not. First I've heard of it. I don't even know how we would do that. I really don't. The best way a talent can be hired off the platform is to do marketing 101. It's a venue, just like any other site is a venue. Just like we advertise on Google and Facebook and other platforms as well too. That's the best thing the talent can do. There's really would be zero benefit in doing so. As I said, 95% of our time, energy is on bringing those clients to the platform. And that's where the technology team spends their time and energy. It's just no truth to the rumor. First I've heard of it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Something that we talked about earlier on is about Morgan Stanley, and the fact that you've had an $18 million investment from Morgan Stanley, which by anyone's measure is an exciting thing for a company. I wish I had $18 million investment. But I'm interested to know, did Morgan Stanley, did they request any kind of model changes? Did they look at the market? Did they speak to the voices? And what kind of percentage do they have? Like, who's in control? Are you in control? Is Morgan Stanley in control? How's that now working?
There's a lot of questions in there. So yeah, we historically, again, I was trying to do a quick look back and set for context. Stephanie and I were the two only shareholders of Voices.com. We've been able to grow the company. There's really only three sources, which is either you bring on debt, in which case you lend money from a bank, which we've done that and paid off the debts. You can sell a piece of your company, which is equity. And that's what we've done in this situation with Morgan Stanley. And then I've just kind of cash from operations as well too. Knowing that we wanted to grow much faster, really getting a cash infusion from a venture capitalist was really the only way to do so. And so any market is going to be a winner take all or a winner take most. And think of from soda pop to taxi companies to car rentals. There's usually a 1-2, maybe a 1-2-3 in terms of entities in the space. And so over the years, we've actually received a number of kind of inbound interest from a variety of investors. Basically, I just kind of kept a log, a spreadsheet of who might be interested. So when the time came that we realized, hey, look, we've got a lot of things that we felt that the timing was right. We completed a total what's called a total addressable market of what the global market is for voiceover, which is $4 billion worldwide. There's 16 million voiceover jobs, 16 million. So, and they're across kind of all the categories. When we were able to kind of put that whole story together and create a really compelling narrative, as well as back that up with data, then we just went on a roadshow. And we met with a number of investors in New York and Silicon Valley and LA, and found what I believe to be a great partner in Morgan Stanley. It's a minority investment, so for clarity, that means that they own far less than half, which is really important to us. We still have a degree of control over our own destiny, and that comes down to how we communicate, how we operate internally, the corporate culture that we've tried to develop over the years. And but certainly that's one of the key differences, just again, that of inside baseball here, is that operationally now there's a board of directors, which historically has been advisory boards. So a board of directors provides yet another layer of kind of governance and oversight in terms of the day-to-day operations. So I think if folks are looking for that level of oversight, it's there now with a great team from Morgan Stanley, as well as independent board of directors as well.
Yes, cool. Okay, well listen, I'd like to put it out. Have you got time for some questions?
Sure, yeah.
Good, okay. Well listen, there we go. Okay, listen, before we go and do the questions, I'd like to just give a parting kind of comment, I think. And that is that I think the more transparent you can be with the voiceover industry, especially in the UK, I mean, we're all sticklers for it. It's a very cliquey little market. Even if you don't change the fiscal model, I think if you're transparent with people, people have the choice, you know? Okay, let's take some questions. Peter. Over here, okay.
I have two questions. One is, have you considered charging the escrow fee to the client, so the voice artist doesn't have to pay for that, which gives the voice artist more money? And essentially you've got so many clients, and they obviously have more money than you do, so that would be wonderful if that could happen. And the other one is you don't get any feedback from any of the auditions that you post. You don't know whether you were off the mark from a creating perspective. You don't know if they wanted somebody with a different accent, a different read. You have absolutely no feedback, and that doesn't help us get better and provide you with the auditions that you need to land the job. So if you help us, especially with private auditions, that you go for a private audition, you still have no feedback, even if you cannot make that audition, you have nobody to contact to say, look, I can't make this audition, I'm terribly sorry, I'm on holiday or whatever. There's no feedback. Can you provide that to us?
Well, two questions.
Sure.
Can you remember what the first one was?
So I feel like we're again, in all humility, I feel like we're just going to be going around in circles. We truly believe that you're charging the client the escrow fee. You're quoting, and then they charge on top of that. So if you want the 600 quid, quote 600 quid. We're always going to add on top of that. So that might just be a philosophical difference of how we view the issue, if you will. But if you want 600, quote 600, and then then you'll say, well, but the client paid 700. Okay, then charge 700. So I feel like we might be going around a bit in circles on that one. But to answer the feedback question, we actually built some tools. One is the every time you're listened to, there's a counter that goes up when you're listened. You might see that as like an ear within the statistics. Another one is the light, so there's a thumbs up. We're all tremendously busy, and those clients, I'm sure, who are going through the auditions and listening carefully are also tremendously busy, asking them to provide specific feedback despite us building the tools. We actually call it audition feedback. And so it's a drop-down menu where they can say, and we've tried to make it less about the artistic performance and more about the technical recording. So for instance, there's something, kind of equalizers, just it's too basic, too treble, there's sibilants, there's plosives, there's some type of kind of technical issue because there's some really amazing talent and you just don't, you may not necessarily know what it's being heard like in terms of playback on the other side. We don't manipulate the file at all, so whatever gets uploaded gets immediately played. But it is the audition feedback, and that would actually be sent to you as an email. I think in turn that's, to reuse the term, I think it's good feedback for us to realize despite us creating a tool, it's not being used. And that's disappointing and certainly something that we can work on. The tool's at least there.
Yeah, just one point on that. As a suggestion, because I've used Voices.com, Voice23, but I'll go for casting myself. And one of the things I think may be useful for casting directors, rather than just skipping on, is to have a kind of, just like 2 or 3 no buttons to say no voice, no studio, no whatever.
Right.
And that can then at least be fed back so you've got some kind of thing. It's just very, very quick with that.
It needs to be on the, I hear you, it needs to be right within the user interface. Like you see it right there.
Via the no button.
I see. Okay.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions because we are running relatively late. Go on, Louisa, be nice.
I'm going to be lovely and nice. Before I start, David, there's quite a lot of chat on Twitter about this. Your wife was sweeter to say hello.
Oh, lovely.
So she's monitoring. I can totally see why you'd see the UK as an untapped market, which were your words. And I'm assuming that the recent $18 million investment from Morgan Stanley is in part at least to help you expand into what you consider to be untapped markets. But what I can't see, I can see what's in it for you with that. What I can't see is what's in it for us. We do not have an audition culture in this country. We already have a large number of companies that act as a voice directory and find us work. And none of those pitch voices against each other to quote as cheaply as possible to get the job. None of those take money at every touch point, the subscription fee, the escrow fee, the managed services fee. You would actually take more from any job I would do on your website than my voice agent would. Can you not see that the voices on your website are your product? But it feels as if you treat them with disdain. And if you continue to do that, then your product quality lessens to the point where your clients, who actually don't pay to use your service other than the money you take as a middleman, will go elsewhere. Maybe somewhere like voice booking, who have a different model to you, who are clear about what money they take, who have a quality barrier, who do not charge a subscription fee, and who listen to their voices when a job comes in that does not easily fit into their rate card. Yeah. So you're going to find a lot of negative feedback if you move more strongly into this market, because nobody in this room, I don't think, can see who wins except you. So please tell us why we would benefit.
Good question.
The rate was preset. And so a client could visit your profile and just hire you on the spot and skip through the audition. Because it's actually, truthfully, it's somewhat inefficient. The client already knows who they want to work with.
And they have the budget.
And they have the budget. Why go through the audition process and candidly disappoint 9 people for the one person who is almost already, surefire to get the gig. So that's something that we've been thinking about, is this kind of this hire now idea. So it sounded like that was the most positive feedback I received all night. There's a few nods in the room, but that's one that we've been certainly toying with.